Good evening, I'm Hafiz Marzukhi and here are the top stories tonight. We'll start by looking into Trump's State of the Union, and Indian PM Modi visits Israel as Iran tensions mount. All that and more coming up on AWANI International. United States President Donald Trump marked his first year back in the White House by delivering the longest State of the Union address to Congress on record. In a speech lasting nearly 1 hour and 50 minutes, he laid out his administration's priorities on immigration, trade and foreign policy. However, he focused above all on the economy, which he said has delivered what he called a turnaround for the ages for America.
Trump pointed to Wall Street's continued strength and strong job numbers, but glossed over the economy's slower than expected growth in 2025.
Today our border is secure, our spirit is restored, inflation is plummeting, incomes are rising fast, the roaring economy is roaring like never before, and our enemies are scared, our military and police are stacked, and America is respected again, perhaps like never before.
It remains to be seen how that message will resonate with voters. Recent polls show Trump's approval ratings have slipped to their lowest levels since the start of his second term. And with midterm elections in November, the stakes are high. Republicans are fighting to hold on to control of both the House and the Senate.
Well, US President Donald Trump has put the economy and immigration front and center in his State of the Union address. But according to an analyst, his speech offered very little in the way of new policy direction.
The president had a pretty tall task. He has to convince people that his approach is the right approach. And it's a challenge in an election year when he's got his approval numbers dropping. The economy is not in a recession, but certainly not growing. And he's got a pretty uphill battle convincing people that the inflation animal is being tamed. That said, he is ever the showman and was able to make some political points to, I think, rally people behind some of the more dramatic events that have happened in American politics, especially in foreign policy issues.
On foreign policy, Trump cast the United States as resurgent and central to global affairs. But analysts say that message carries political risk. Trump won back the White House in 2024, promising to scale back U.S. involvement in overseas conflicts, a position that remains popular with his MAGA base.
The president wanted to convey the case that the U.S. is resurgent and that it's more important than it ever has been that the U.S. be involved in these affairs. That's dangerous territory for him politically because his party doesn't fully agree. There are a lot of folks in his party who would back Democrats when it comes to trying to push back on the administration on things like tariff or involvement in these foreign conflicts.
US President Donald Trump also delivered a fresh warning to Iran in his State of the Union address, pledging to block Tehran's nuclear program. Trump claimed that Iran is pursuing missile development capable of striking the US mainland.
They've already developed missiles that can threaten Europe and our bases overseas, and they're working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America. After Midnight Hammer, they were warned to make no future attempts to rebuild their weapons program, and in particular, nuclear weapons, yet they continue.
Trump, however, stressed that he would prefer to resolve differences with Iran through diplomacy.
My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen.
Trump's comments come amid a US military buildup in the Middle East and ahead of a third round of indirect talks scheduled for Thursday in Geneva. The negotiations, mediated by Oman, will see US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner meet with Iranian officials. Now that's the headline for tonight. We'll be back right after the break.
Di sebalik setiap kejayaan, ada visi. Inilah kisah usahawan Bumiputra yang membina jenama, mencipta peluang dan menggerakkan ekonomi negara. Dipacu oleh aspirasi Pelan Transformasi Ekonomi Bumiputra 2035 dengan sokongan ekosistem dan agensi pemacu, mereka melangkah lebih jauh dari pasaran tempatan ke pentas global. Saksikan Putra 35 setiap Isnin jam 10 pagi, eksklusif di Astro AWANI.
The United States will provide on-site passport services this week in a West Bank settlement. Now, this is the first time American consular officials have offered such services to settlers in the occupied territory. The move comes just days after Israel's cabinet approved measures to expand control over the West Bank. The U.S. Embassy said consular officers will offer routine passport services in Efrat on February 27th, with similar services planned for other locations. Tens of thousands of dual U.S.-Israeli nationals are believed to live in the West Bank. Last week, Israel's cabinet approved measures to tighten the country's control over the West Bank using land purchases for settlers, a step Palestinians call de facto annexation. More than 700,000 settlers live in the West Bank alongside some 3 million Palestinians who seek the territory for a future state. Most of the international community regards Israeli settlements as illegal under international law, a position Israel disputes. US President Donald Trump has said he opposes formal annexation but has not taken steps to curb settlement expansion, which has increased during his term. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Israel for a two-day visit to strengthen ties between the two countries. Now, the trip comes at a sensitive moment with ongoing conflict in Gaza and rising tensions with Iran. Modi is expected to address Israel's parliament, the Knesset, making him the first Indian leader to do so. He will also hold meetings with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Isaac Herzog. The visit comes as both countries look to strengthen ties in defense, technology and trade, a relationship that has grown steadily since Modi took office more than a decade ago. India is among the largest buyers of Israeli weapons. Analysts say the trip will also test India's foreign policy as it seeks to balance its relationship with Israel alongside strong ties with other Middle Eastern countries, including Iran. Modi's visit comes less than a week after India joined more than 100 countries in condemning Israel's settlement expansion in the West Bank. The UN General Assembly has adopted a resolution calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Ukraine and for a comprehensive, lasting peace. The non-binding measure is seen as a test of global solidarity for Kiev on the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion. The draft resolution, prepared by Ukraine and a number of European countries, was adopted with 107 votes in favour, 12 against and 51 abstentions. Russia, Belarus and Sudan voted against the resolution, while China and the United States abstained. Washington said it supports a ceasefire, but objected to wording it said could complicate ongoing diplomatic efforts. The session also saw sharp exchanges between the US and China over Beijing's economic ties with Moscow. Washington highlighted Chinese imports of Russian oil and military sales that it says are sustaining the war. The vote comes just days after trilateral talks between the US, Russia and Ukraine ended without a breakthrough. Further negotiations are expected in the coming weeks. Germany is committed to maintaining and deepening economic ties with China, according to Chancellor Friedrich Merz. On his first visit to China today, Merz is the latest European leader seeking to reset relations with Beijing amid ongoing global trade uncertainty.
Merz is accompanied by a delegation of around 30 German companies, including major automakers such as Volkswagen and BMW, as they face intensifying competition from Chinese rivals. Engagement between Europe's largest economy and China is seen as a potential signal for the direction of broader EU-China relations later this year. In a meeting with MERS, Chinese Premier Li Qiang called on both sides to work together to safeguard multilateralism and free trade, in remarks widely seen as a reference to US trade policies that have disrupted global markets. China reclaimed its position as Germany's largest trading partner in 2025, overtaking the US. Official data shows imports from China were more than double the value of German exports to the country last year.
Japan plans to deploy missiles to a remote western island near Taiwan by 2031 as tensions with China continue to simmer. This marks the first time Tokyo has set a clear timeline for the deployment since the plan was first announced in 2022. The missiles will be stationed on the island of Yonaguni, located just 110 kilometers from Taiwan's coast. The island currently hosts a coastal surveillance unit staffed by around 160 members of Japan's self-defense force. That unit will be equipped with medium-range surface-to-air missiles capable of intercepting incoming aircraft and missiles. The Japanese-made system has a range of about 50 kilometers, provides 360-degree coverage, and can track up to 100 targets while engaging up to 12 simultaneously. The announcement comes a day after China imposed export curbs on 20 Japanese companies and entities, citing national security concerns. Tensions between Tokyo and Beijing have escalated since November, when Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said the country would consider using military force if China were to attack Taiwan. The director of the Louvre Museum has resigned months after her high-profile theft of France's crown jewels from the Paris landmark. Laurence Descartes submitted her resignation to President Emmanuel Macron following sustained pressure over the robbery that took place last October.
Thieves had used a stolen vehicle-mounted mechanical lift to access the museum in bright daylight last year. 4 main suspects have since been arrested, but the 8 stolen pieces, valued at an estimated 88 million euros, have not been recovered. The items include a diamond and emerald necklace given by French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte to his wife. Days after the raid, Descartes acknowledged that perimeter CCTV systems at the Louvre were weak and aging. Despite receiving more than 8.7 million visitors a year, Descartes previously warned that security upgrades had been slow due to budget constraints faced by large cultural institutions. A parliamentary inquiry into the security failures is underway, with findings expected in May.
South Korea's birth rate rose for a second straight year in 2025, government data showed on Wednesday, in a further sign that the country facing a demographic crisis for nearly a decade may be starting to turn a corner. South Korea's total fertility rate, the average number of babies a woman is expected to have during her reproductive life, stood at 0.8 in 2025, up from 0.75 back in 2024, according to preliminary data from the Ministry of Data and Statistics.
New births in the Asian countries started to rebound in 2024 on a post-pandemic boost and supported by government policies after 8 consecutive years of declines that saw it register the world's lowest birth rate at 0.72 in 2023. There were 5 new births per 1,000 people in 2025, up from 4.7 in 2024. That compared with 5.6 in China last year, 4.6 in Taiwan last year, and 5.7 in Japan in 2024, where the trend remains downwards. Marriages, a leading indicator of new births with a time lag of 1 to 2 years, rose 8.1% in 2025, after recording the biggest ever jump of 14.8% in 2024.
That report concludes AWANI International tonight. Stay with us as we track the strategies and power shifts shaping the new global order. For more updates, visit international.astroawani.com and follow us on social media as well. I'm Hafiz Marzukhi. Thank you for watching and good night.